So I'm going to discuss a very controversial subject, which is Israel. Um, I've touched on this subject in previous videos. Um, for example, last year when the Gaza war was going on. But I'd just like to sum up some of my thoughts as they are at present. I've never sought to be popular in my videos. I've never sought to kind of say things that I think people want to hear. I've always sought to simply be honest about my own reflections on things. So I want to express a few of my thoughts on the way Israel is perceived by much of the world and my stance on that. It's quite clear that there is very much a cause célèbre amongst the left, but amongst a lot of people for sort of protesting against the Zionist regime, fascist Israel, this sort of thing. And it is also quite clear that the number of Palestinians who have been killed in this conflict far outweighs the number of Israelis. It's something like 3 times more, at least. Um, Gaza is a dismal place, there's no question about that. And Palestinians have a pretty tough life. So all of these factors kind of make Israel be seen as the bully, as the aggressor. Um, I've even seen comparisons, for example, with the Palestinians and the Navari, I think they're called, from Avatar. Um, but I've always had a reservation about this vilification of Israel, and I'm going to try and explain why. Firstly, there is a problem in taking this position because people who are so blinded by their hatred of Israel will not listen to any alternative view whatsoever because they automatically pigeonhole you as a Zionist pig, as an apologist for Israel, this sort of thing. It doesn't matter if you say that you don't agree with everything Israel does. It doesn't matter if you even outright condemn certain Israeli actions. They will still pigeonhole you as in a certain way, and that's a pity. So, for example, I I see no justification in what Israel done last year in hitting the UN compound. Um, the facts are the facts. Hundreds of civilians were killed and injured. I reject the notion of genocide because genocide is a specific attempt to eradicate an entire number of people. Now, if Israel wanted to do that, it certainly has the firepower. Israel would have just went in and wiped out all Palestinians or tried to. Um, Israel has been involved in a lot of wars with its neighbours, and I'm not going to get into all the complexities of what started those wars and the process of the wars and so on. But I do think there is hypocrisy in the position of a lot of those who vilify Israel. Because, in my opinion, if their motivation is really human rights for the Palestinians, I do find it curious that they don't seem to have the same concern for situations that are just as grave and graver, such as the Rohingya Muslims in Southeast Asia. I mean, thousands have been killed in recent years, or certainly displaced. Their life is just as hard as the Palestinians. They're stateless people. They share a lot of the same plight. So why are they not a cause célèbre of the left? Where is the concern for the 5,000 plus Yemenis who have been killed this year? A very large number of them civilians, including many children, killed by the Saudi regime. The list goes on. Now this year, I'm aware last year was very bloody, but this year the figures for the Israeli-Palestinian conflict are around 100, and a lot of those include knife attacks on Israeli civilians. Um, what I find hard to accept is that this narrative that one side is evil, the other side is completely saint-like. That is the narrative that comes from those who hate Israel. It's pretty much Israel is the devil, Israel is evil, etc., etc., etc. The Palestinians are completely innocent; they've never done anything wrong, and they're just the victim, and that's it. I think that narrative is not only extremely false, but it ignores, for example, the fact that when Hamas fires rockets into Israel, they're deliberately targeting civilian areas. Abbas has made very few attempts to rein in on that. Now, people will counter, what about the Jewish settlers? Well, Israel has its fair share of extremists, there's no question about that. But the facts are the facts, and the fact is that when racist Jewish settlers have, for example, attacked Arab Israelis, they've been arrested. That's a simple reality. Is Israel a perfect society? Far from it. Is there racism in Israel? Of course there is. But I do have a problem with this narrative that Israel is an evil fascist state, whereas the Palestinians are completely innocent, because it's an utterly false narrative. It also ignores the human rights abuses within Palestine itself, within the Palestinian territories, against other Palestinians. I'm not just talking about the fate of those who are alleged to collaborate with Israel. I'm talking about, for example, the treatment of gays and minorities. It's abysmal. Um, so I just don't buy into this idea that Palestinians are entirely innocent. And that's taken into account the enormous suffering they've been through. Um, this, more than any other conflict in the world, probably, seems to have a never-ending sort of cycle. Whenever there's optimism, it's immediately dashed, and I suspect that both sides are partly responsible for that. I think that Netanyahu is not a good prime minister. I think he is far more provocative than he is progressive. Um, and certainly some of his comments don't help. I mean, blaming the Palestinians for the Holocaust is ridiculous. Um, but I do think that Israel is vilified in a way that other nations are not. I guarantee you, if pretty much any other, especially great power, especially powerful countries, East or West for that matter, went through what Israel goes through in terms of rocket attacks, and I'm not making a moral equilibrium here with the suffering of the Palestinians, okay? That's just, that's not the issue I'm talking about. I'm talking about comparing Israel to other countries. I'm not talking about comparing Israel to the Palestinians. But do you really think that if the Chinese, for example, had rocket attacks from Uyghur separatists, they would show restraint? Do you think that if in mainland Britain we suffered a major real IRA attack, we would show restraint? Do you think um, the Americans would show restraint in a domestic terrorist incident like they certainly didn't in Waco? I could give pretty much any example. The Russians, with the two wars in Chechnya. So I think it's very hypocritical of those countries, especially, and I'm including my own country, to vilify Israel. I shouldn't say the countries actually, because the British government doesn't, but I would like to think if these people are talking about boycotting Israeli products or something, if they at least had consistency. Okay, so boycott Israeli products. And you know what? Boycott Eritrean products, boycott Saudi products, boycott Russian products, boycott Chinese laptops. The list goes on and on and on. Because the things that Israel is charged with, many other countries are guilty of. So, the charges Israel's killed lots of Palestinian civilians. There's many other countries that are guilty of that. But they do not face the same level of vilification. Not even close. So I do think there is something strange about the fact that the level to which Israel is vilified is completely disproportionate to the way other countries are criticized. No other country on earth, including the United States, is attacked and criticized as much as Israel is. You know, a lot of countries face criticism, but none face the sort of criticism that Israel does. So my question is this. Let's say Israel completely holds back. Are people really expecting Israel to not respond when rockets are fired into Israel? Because the focus is always on how evil the Israelis are and how they treat the Palestinians. And I've no doubt about it, there are examples of disgraceful behaviour. But to present this as black and white is a perverse distortion of reality. And there is a lot of lies out there. I've seen, for example, pictures of massacres of Palestinians, which were actually massacres in Syria. And the people who shamelessly spread this information around know what they're doing. I mean, I'm going to once again make the disclaimer that I'm not saying Israel's innocent. Israel has done things that cannot be excused. But what I take issue with is those who think there is an exceptionalism here. That is, those who believe that Israel is the only country in the world that's guilty of these things. And those who present the Palestinians as being entirely innocent. I mean, knifing an Israeli civilian because of the actions of the government, that's they don't even know what that person's politics are. For all they know, that person could hate Netanyahu, but they're an Israeli, so that's fine. And I do think some of those who preach about human rights of the Palestinians really couldn't give a damn if Israeli children were killed. They couldn't care less. Because they've got into this narrative that Israel is the big bad bully, therefore a few Israeli deaths, oh, well, there's hundreds of Palestinian deaths, therefore a few Israeli deaths are okay. That's the narrative. Now, if you're a fair-minded person, you would take the view that no civilian deaths are acceptable. But I believe that these people are so blinded by their hatred of Israel, this uncompromising red mist that they feel, that they're beyond all sort of reasonable outlooks on the situation. It's not a case of saying Israel's right, Israel can do anything it wants. Israel, as a country, should face scrutiny, but so should every other country. And the contention I have is that Israel faces a unique level of scrutiny that is disproportionate to what other countries face. And I think that's unfair, and I think it's so. I do think that there is something behind this. I'm not going to say it's anti-Semitism necessarily, because there are Jewish people who are very critical of Israel. But I do think some of those who are critical of Israel are definitely motivated by anti-Jewish feelings. I think that can definitely be seen. Also, trashing a supermarket that's selling Israeli products isn't going to help the Palestinians anyway. What the Palestinians need is stable government, infrastructure, rule of law. Those are the issues that Palestinians need. Has Israel always been helpful? Of course not. But if the Palestinians think that firing rockets into Israel is going to get them a better life, it's just nonsensical. Israel is a powerful country for its size. So leaving aside the moral arguments, it's a stupid thing to do. It's kind of like poking a bear. Um, I'll leave it there. There's not much more can add to that. People can maybe dismiss me as a Zionist pig or whatever, but frankly, I don't really care, because I feel that there needs to be some counterbalance to the unmitigating vitriol that is out there. That's all I'm saying. I'm not saying Israel is innocent. I'm not even saying that Israel shouldn't be criticized. I'm not saying that for a second. What I am saying is that It is inconsistent to vilify Israel whilst not holding the same standards for other countries. That is utterly hypocritical. I mean, China's facing, this is just one example, China's facing insurgency in Xinjiang. There's a nationalist movement there, a separatist movement. Hundreds have been killed in recent years. Probably many more have been displaced. Why is there no cause to celebrate for that? And there's many other examples. Russia's two bloody wars in Chechnya. You didn't see angry demonstrations in London against the Russian embassy from the left. So that's all I'm saying. Just putting these issues out there. Think of me what you will. But I think everything I've said is accurate. And I'll say a few more things. There are things that Israel can be doing. I think settlement building is a big mistake. I think it's wrong. I think Netanyahu is a liability. I think he's a hawk, obviously, and I think he's slightly erratic in some of his behaviour. I think Israel would be better suited under a more moderate prime minister. But at the same time, Israelis, like any other country on earth, have a right to expect their leader to defend their country. That's what every leader in the world is expected to do. Every president and prime minister. So if people are expecting any Israeli prime minister to just sort of sit back and say, okay, we'll just sit here and let rockets fire into our territory and accept it because we're the bad guys. It's nonsensical.